Hello dear students, welcome to Computer Science Department. So in the last class we have discussed the different components of motherboard. Yes, there are so many different components present on the motherboard. We have discussed. Some of them are BIOS, processor, CMOS, bus, slots. Yes, those are different components of motherboard we have discussed in the previous classes. So today we discuss the next part of the first chapter, that is typical configuration of computer system. Here we are discussing memory, some introduction about memory. So regarding memory we already discussed in the PUC first year. In the last year also you have studied the meaning of memory. So what do you mean by memory in generally? So memory is nothing but it is a one place. It is our place in a computer where we can store data as well as instruction. What it says? It is our storage space where we can store data as well as instructions. Is it clear? So memory means what? It is a storage space in where? In computer. Remember, memory outside in computer. It is a storage space. It is a place where we can store something. We can store something means it may be data, it may be instruction. It is nothing but memory. Is it clear? Memory, it is a place in a computer where we can store data as well as instruction in computer system. Is it clear? So next we are discussing the different types of memory. There are different types of memory we are discussing here. So there are two types of memory. The first one is internal memory and the second one is secondary memory. Right? So memory means it is a place in a computer system where we can store data as well as instruction. Data as well as instruction. So there are two types of memory. The first one is internal memory and the second one is secondary memory. Internal memory and second one secondary memory. So in the last year what I told, in memory, when come to the memory, there are two types, primary memory and secondary memory I told. So here we are going little bit depth here, right? The first one internal memory and second one secondary memory. About secondary memory we already discussed in the PUC first year. Yes, the secondary memory. What are the secondary memory devices? Those are hard disk, floppy disk, yes, pen drive, CD. Those are all comes under secondary memory. So here we are discussing some introduction about internal memory. Yes. So what is this internal memory? So this internal memory includes three main components like it may be registers, cache memory as well as primary memory. Yes, the internal memory includes registers, cache memory and primary memory. So it is what purpose we are using this internal memory? It is mainly used for temporary storage. Yes, the internal memory is mainly used for what purpose? The temporary storage purpose. The internal memory includes three parts. The first one is registers, it includes. The second one cache memory, register, cache memory, and third one is a primary memory. So all these combined we called it as the internal memory. So in internal memory, what purpose? For temporary storage. Internal memory is mainly used for temporary storage. So now let us discuss one by one. The first one, register. So what is this register? So it is a one component. It is a one component. It is a very high speed and it is a temporary storage which is inside the CPU. The register, it is a one component. It is a high speed storage. Normally it is a high speed storage device for temporary storage purpose. Remember, this register is mainly used for temporary storage purpose, not for permanent. So for permanent we are using secondary memory. So if you want to store temporarily, while executing some instruction, we are storing in temporarily. So where we are storing? The registers. In registers, we can store some data as well as instruction. And these are very high speed memory. is a high speed memory which is inside the CPU. The second one, cache memory. So normally cache memory we call it the fastest memory. This is nothing but the fastest memory resides in between CPU and RAM. Yes, the cache memory is the fastest and high speed memory. Fastest or high speed memory which is resides in between CPU and RAM. Normally it is placed in between CPU and RAM. That is about cache memory. So next, there are two types of cache memory normally. The first one is level 1 cache, that is L1, and second one level 2 L2 cache memory. Level 1 L1 as well as level 2 L2. So normally we call it L1 and L2 cache memory. So what is the difference between that L1 and L2? L1 cache memory as well as L2 cache memory. So L1 is a very small memory. Means L1 cache memory contains a limited amount of data. It is small amount of data it can store. So normally the range is around 2 KB to 64 KB. Around 2 KB kilobyte. Yes, 2 KB to 64 KB of data it can store in L1 type cache memory. That's why it's a very small memory it can hold. The second one, L2 cache memory. So L2 cache or level 2 cache memory. So compared to L1, so L2 is normally high storage capacity. So normally around 256 KB to 512 KB. Around 256 KB to 512 KB of data it can store when processing. Is it clear? So these are the two different types of cache memory. Yes, the first one register, second one cache memory, and next we go for primary memory. We already know about the primary memory. So primary memory, it is also called as main memory. The primary memory is also called as main memory. So here there are two types of primary memory. The first one is RAM and second one is ROM. So we know about what you mean by RAM and what you mean by ROM. RAM stands for, it is a random access memory. RAM stands for, it is a random access memory, and ROM stands for read only memory. Read only memory. These two comes under primary memory. Yes, these two comes under primary memory. So now let us discuss some of the different types of RAM. So there are 4 different types of RAM I mentioned here. The first one is DRAM. So D stands for here dynamic RAM or dynamic random access memory. It is a one type of RAM. The second one SRAM. So SRAM is nothing but static RAM, static random access memory. In short, static RAM or SRAM. Then third one SDRAM. So SDRAM is synchronous dynamic random access memory. Synchronous dynamic random access memory. This is another kind of RAM. And the fourth one DDR SDRAM. So DDR SDRAM is nothing but double data rate. DDR is nothing but double data rate. S means again synchronous, D means dynamic random access memory. Double data rate, synchronous dynamic random access memory. So these are the 4 different types of RAM. Right? So in primary memory there are 2 types. The first one RAM and second one ROM. RAM stands for random access memory. ROM stands for read only memory. So RAM and ROM we already discussed in the PUC first year. Just go through it once again and you come to know the basic about RAM and ROM. And the last part we will discuss here the features of internal memory. Yes, where is internal memory? Here. We are discussing internal memory, the features of internal memory. So what are those features here? The first one is it's a temporary storage. The first feature is the internal memory. Normally we call it as temporary storage. For temporary storage we are using this internal memory. Then second one, fast access. I mean whatever the data we stored in internal memory we can access very fast. Fast work ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. Suppose if you are using secondary devices, so then that time the data access is very slow. So how to get the difference suppose if you are copying some data from computer to pen drive and computer with one drive to another drive, which takes more time? The pen drive, means outside the secondary storage. Primary to secondary, if you are transferring data, it takes some time. So within primary memory, within internal memory, if you are transferring the data, it takes very less time. That's why we call it, it's a fast access. Third one, limited storage capacity, means here we can store limited amount of data. We cannot store large amount of data. Only small amount of data we can store in internal memory. That's why we call it the limited storage capacity. It has some small amount of data we can store here. And the last one is, it is very costly compared to secondary storage device. Yes, when compared to secondary, the internal memories are high cost. Means prices are very high compared to secondary. Right? So these are the some of the features of internal memory. What are those features? First one, temporary storage. Means it stores the data temporarily. Second one, fast access. Fast access means the accessing the data using internal memory is very fast. Then the third one, limited storage capacity. Means we can store the data, very small amount of data we can store here. Not large amount of data, very small amount of limited data we can store here. And the last one is high cost. We can say that is a features as well as one disadvantage. It is also looks like a disadvantage because the cost is very high. Yes, so these are the some features of internal memory. So these are the some basic introduction about the memory. Right? What do you mean by memory? It is a place in a computer where we can store data as well as instruction. There are two types of memory: internal memory and secondary memory. So when come to the internal memory, again it contains registers, cache memory and primary memory. Yes, it contains register, cache memory and primary memory. Register means it's a device which contains the high speed memory. We normally call it a high speed memory as well as temporary storage, which is inside the CPU. Second one, cache memory is the fastest memory. Yes, when talking about the computer, which one is the fastest memory? Fastest memory the cache memory, we called it as the fastest memory, which is resides in between CPU and RAM. And then type, there are two types of cache, L1 cache and L2 cache. Yes, L1 cache is very small, between 2 KB to around 64 KB of data it can store. Then L2 cache, it contains around 256 KB to 512 KB. Then when come to the primary memory, it is also called as main memory. Primary memory is also called as main memory. So there are two types here, RAM and ROM. RAM and ROM. So RAM means it is a random access memory. ROM means read-only memory. Then come to the RAM. DRAM, SRAM, SDRAM and DDR, SDRAM. Right? So these are the four different types of RAM. DRAM, SRAM, SDRAM, DDR, SDRAM. Double data rate, yes, double data rate, synchronous, dynamic, random access memory. And the last we discuss the features of memory. The features here, the first one, temporary storage. We can store the data temporarily. Fast access, we can access the data very fast. Limited storage capacity as well as high cost. Yes, so these are the some introduction about the memory. The remaining part we discuss in the next class. Okay, thank you.